My name is Audrey Bennett. I'm 28 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I was just an assistant manager at a bookstore in Philadelphia. My life was predictable. Open the store at 9, close at 6, feed my cat, and watch reruns of 90s sitcoms. I liked the quiet. I never asked for attention, drama, or surprises. But then came the call from the family lawyer, and suddenly, I was being dragged into the spotlight of a family that never really saw me. My grandfather, Richard Bennett, had passed away, and I was summoned for the will reading at his estate in upstate New York. The Bennetts are old money. Think country clubs, private schools, and family names engraved on library wings. I was the outsider. My mom had me young and never really fit in with the rest of them. She died when I was 15, and after that, my contact with the Bennetts was reduced to cold holiday cards and the occasional awkward phone call. I didn't expect to be invited to the will reading. Honestly, I wasn't even sure why I went. Maybe I hoped he remembered me, or maybe I just wanted closure. The estate was massive, stone pillars, wrought iron gates, and a driveway long enough to host a marathon. Inside, the air smelled like money and mothballs. Everyone was there, my uncles in their tailored suits, my cousin Vanessa with her practiced smirk, and Aunt Lydia who looked like she was born judging people. I stood in the corner, sipping cold coffee, trying not to sweat through my blouse. When the lawyer, Mr. Chapman, finally arrived, everyone hushed. He wore a navy suit and a look that said he'd rather be anywhere else. He started with the formalities, listing properties, stocks, and family heirlooms. Each name was followed by something grand: a summer house in Maine, a vintage car collection, trust funds thick with zeros. Then he got to me. "To my granddaughter Audrey Bennett," he read. "I leave the sum of $10. There was silence for a second, and then the laughter came. Vanessa snorted. Uncle Gregory muttered, "Figures." Even Lydia smirked. I froze. I wanted to disappear into the antique rug beneath my feet, but then Mr. Chapman cleared his throat. "There is one more item." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a second envelope, thick and sealed with a red wax stamp. This was given to me personally by Mr. Bennett with instructions to be opened only after the reading. The room shifted. Every eye turned to me. My hands trembled as I stepped forward. I had no idea what was in that envelope, but I could feel it. Something was about to change. I broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was my grandfather's, neat and deliberate. "Audrey," it began, "if they're laughing now, let them. They never understood what mattered. But you did." My breath caught in my throat. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from disbelief. The letter went on to say that everything, the estate, the business shares, the accounts, was to be entrusted to me. The $10? It was symbolic, a reminder to never let others determine my worth. The room erupted. Voices overlapped, confusion, anger, disbelief. Vanessa stood up, shouting. Gregory demanded a rereading. Lydia just sat frozen, her jaw slack. Mr. Chapman held up his hand. "It's all legal," he said calmly. "Mr. Bennett changed his will 3 weeks before his death. The second envelope was part of the instructions. There is no mistake." I clutched the letter, feeling like the floor might fall out from under me. I wasn't dreaming. This was real. I didn't know how to feel. Vindicated? Overwhelmed? Terrified? Probably all three. I never asked for any of this. I didn't want to be the center of a family feud or the recipient of their stares. But deep down, something stirred, a mix of pride and defiance. My grandfather had seen me, really seen me. He didn't leave me money. He left me a legacy. And now, I had to figure out what to do with it. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake in the guest room of the mansion, the letter on my chest, the words echoing in my mind. I could feel the resentment brewing downstairs. They would never accept this. I wasn't one of them. But maybe that was exactly why he chose me. Because I wouldn't play by their rules. Because I'd build something different. Something better. Tomorrow I would face them. But tonight, I let myself feel it. The beginning of something I never expected. The next morning, the air in the mansion was heavier than before. It wasn't just the humidity clinging to the tall windows, or the fog that hovered over the garden. It was them. Every footstep I took echoed with tension. At breakfast, no one spoke to me. Vanessa flipped through her phone like I didn't exist. Gregory scrolled emails with exaggerated huffs. Aunt Lydia just stirred her tea, eyes fixed on nothing. It was like I'd committed a crime. And maybe, in their eyes, I had. I'd stolen their future. I took my coffee to the veranda, trying to get away from the icy glares. The estate spread out below like a scene from a movie. Manicured lawns, stone paths winding through rose gardens, the old greenhouse where I used to play when I visited as a kid. My grandfather used to meet me there, hands always stained from soil, eyes kinder than anyone else's in the family. I missed him in a way I hadn't allowed myself to feel at the will reading. Now, with the house under my name, grief mixed with guilt and disbelief. Mr. Chapman had left early that morning, but not before handing me a thick folder. Inside were documents, passwords, bank account details, and a letter from the house staff explaining the logistics of ownership. I was expected to make decisions soon, about the estate, the businesses, the trust. I barely knew where to begin. I still felt like the girl working behind a register, not someone who owned anything more than secondhand furniture and a dented car. But the ink on the paper didn't lie. I had power now, and it scared me. The staff greeted me differently that day. Respectful. Almost hopeful. It was subtle. The way the housekeeper offered me a fresh croissant. The way the groundskeeper tipped his hat when I walked by. I realized they weren't just employees. They were people who had depended on my grandfather. Now, they depended on me. That responsibility hit harder than the inheritance itself. It wasn't just money. It was trust, history, a legacy that needed more than signatures and titles. It needed someone to protect it. Later, Vanessa cornered me in the hallway near the old portrait gallery. "You think this changes anything?" she snapped. Her tone was razor sharp, but her eyes betrayed her. There was fear there. "You're still nobody. A fluke. Grandpa probably lost his mind near the end." I didn't respond at first. I didn't need to. Her words were meant to hurt, but they only confirmed what I suspected. She wasn't angry about the money. She was angry about being overlooked. I looked her in the eyes and said calmly, "Then why are you so afraid of a nobody?" That night, a family meeting was called. Lydia demanded it. We gathered in the drawing room, every one of them pretending civility while plotting their next move. Lydia laid out her concerns, questioning the legality of the second will, hinting at possible coercion. I stayed quiet, letting Mr. Chapman's documentation speak for itself. But inside, I was boiling. They couldn't accept the truth because it shattered their illusion, that they were the chosen ones, the rightful heirs. My existence rewrote the narrative they'd rehearsed their whole lives. When the accusations didn't stick, they shifted tactics. Gregory suggested we collaborate on managing the estate, code for taking back control. Vanessa proposed splitting assets for fairness. Lydia even offered to help with public relations. I listened to every pitch like a shark among minnows. They were desperate, and I finally understood something my grandfather had written. They love the family name. You love what it stands for. That was the difference. That was why he chose me. I needed space. I left the room without a word and went straight to the greenhouse. It hadn't changed. The same cracked tiles, the same earthy smell. Even the old potting bench was still there. I sat on the bench and let myself cry. Not because I was weak, but because I was overwhelmed. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about identity. I wasn't one of them, but I wasn't an outsider anymore either. I was in between. And in that space, I had to build something new, something honest. That night, I started going through the ledgers in the study. My grandfather had left notes everywhere, tucked between pages, scribbled in margins. His handwriting told a story more intimate than any dinner conversation we ever had. He had doubts about the others. He worried about the direction the family was headed, and he believed I could do better. I read until my eyes burned. With every page, the weight on my shoulders grew, but so did my resolve. If this legacy was mine, I'd earn it. Every inch. When I finally turned off the lamp, the house was silent. Outside, fog crept along the grass like a living thing. The estate was mine. The power, the risk, the enemies, all mine too. And tomorrow, I'd start making decisions, not to please them, not to prove anything, but because someone had trusted me to do the right thing, and I wasn't going to waste it. The next morning, I dressed not in grief, but in quiet defiance. A navy blazer I'd borrowed from the guest closet, slacks that actually fit me well, and a pair of flats that didn't click too loud. I didn't want to look rich. I wanted to look ready. In the mirror, I saw someone I didn't fully recognize. Not the girl from the bookstore, not the poor cousin in the corner. Someone in between. Someone becoming. Downstairs, the family was already gathered, probably scheming over burnt toast and expensive jam. Before they could trap me in more thinly veiled threats or guilt trips, I asked for a meeting with the estate's legal and financial advisors. I wanted full access to the records, business holdings, charitable funds, anything under Bennett control. Gregory scoffed. Lydia said I was playing CEO, but Mr. Whitman, the senior financial advisor, took me seriously. "Your grandfather anticipated this," he said, placing a binder in front of me. "He knew they'd challenge you, so he documented everything. Every paper had my name on it. Every figure was explained. It was bulletproof. The deeper I dug, the more I realized how much was at stake. My grandfather didn't just leave me money. He left responsibility. He had cut funding to several wasteful ventures, shifted money to underfunded schools in the city, and was planning to liquidate a failing luxury property project that Gregory had championed. I saw why they hated me now. I wasn't just a surprise. I was an obstacle. Their control, their plans, their image, all undone by my name on a line he signed in ink. By the third day, the calls started. Journalists, old family friends, PR firms offering to shape the narrative. I declined them all. I wasn't ready to speak. I didn't even fully understand my own story yet. Instead, I started speaking to the people who kept the estate running. The cook, the gardeners, the driver who remembered me as the quiet girl with the library book. They told me things the family never did. How my grandfather had started eating dinner alone. How he used to talk about my mom when no one else was around. He hadn't forgotten her. He hadn't forgotten me. One afternoon, I found an old photo album in the study, dusty and buried under reports. Inside were photos of my mother as a child, laughing on the same lawn I now looked out on. One photo was taped to a page. Me, age 7, sitting in the greenhouse with dirt on my nose and a tulip in hand. In my grandfather's writing, "Audrey sees beauty where others see weeds." I cried again. Not from sadness this time, but from clarity. This house, this name, this mess, it was never about power. It was about memory and purpose. Lydia tried a new angle the next day. She offered tea in the drawing room and used her softest voice. "This house is a burden, dear. You're young. You could sell it, travel, live freely. Let us manage what we know best." I almost laughed. The woman who hadn't looked me in the eye for a decade was now playing fairy godmother. "You mean let you undo everything he planned?" I asked. She didn't flinch. "Richard was sentimental. You're practical. Think about it." I stood up and walked away. I was thinking about it, but not the way she hoped. At dinner, I made my first official announcement. The estate's charitable commitments would continue. Gregory choked on his wine. Vanessa muttered something under her breath. I didn't care. The staff needed to hear it. I needed to say it. "If anyone has concerns about this direction," I said calmly, "they're welcome to leave." Silence. I saw it then, a flicker of respect in the butler's eyes, a smile from the groundskeeper standing by the window. They saw what I was trying to do. Maybe they even believed I could do it. That night, I sat on the front steps of the mansion, the sky purple and heavy with summer air. The wind rustled the trees like whispers. I felt exposed, not to the press or the family, but to myself. Every choice I made now echoed further than I imagined, but I wasn't going to run. My grandfather had handed me a map written in decisions and values, not destinations. If I followed that, I'd be okay. Or at least, I'd be able to look at myself in the mirror without flinching. In the dark, I thought of my bookstore job, the smallness of it, the safety. I missed the quiet sometimes. But this was something else. A story not just unfolding around me, but one I had to write, day by day, with 1,000 eyes watching and waiting for me to trip. But I wouldn't. I couldn't. Not with his words still echoing. They love the family name. You love what it stands for. I wasn't just carrying a legacy. I was shaping it. I woke up on the 7th day with clarity. The storm had passed overnight. literally and figuratively. The estate was quiet, washed clean by the rain. I stood at the window in the guest room, the one with faded floral curtains, and looked out over the garden. It was the same view my grandfather must have seen every morning. Now it belonged to me, not just the land, but the view, the legacy, the burden. And today, I would carry all of it, one last time, with my head high. The lawyer returned that morning as scheduled to finalize the documentation. Everything was prepared for the transfer of business authority. I signed each paper slowly, deliberately, as if imprinting my purpose into the ink. Mr. Chapman didn't speak much, but before leaving, he shook my hand and said, "He was right about you." That stayed with me. In a house full of people waiting for me to fail, someone believing in me, even posthumously, mattered more than I expected. It gave me the strength I needed for what came next. I called a final family meeting that afternoon. They gathered reluctantly in the formal dining room, a space that felt like a theater for confrontation. Lydia sat at the head, as if it were still hers. Gregory leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Vanessa played with her nails, already bored. I stood, letter in hand, the same one my grandfather had written. "This was his will," I began. "But it's also mine now, and it's time you heard the rest." I read his words aloud, each one more powerful than the last. He had chosen me not out of spite, but out of hope. When I finished, I looked around. Their faces were unreadable, maybe stunned, maybe calculating. I didn't care anymore. "I'm not here to fight you," I said. "I'm not here to be you either. I'm here to do the work he believed in. You can support that, or you can walk away. But I won't compromise what he built just to keep peace in this room." Vanessa stood first. She didn't say a word, just left. Gregory followed, mumbling about lawyers. Only Lydia remained. She looked older than I'd ever seen her. Smaller. She didn't argue. She just nodded and left, slowly. After they were gone, I didn't celebrate. There was no triumph in holding ground against your own blood. But there was peace. I spent the evening walking the estate, checking in on the greenhouse, the stables, the library. I spoke with the staff about their ideas, their needs. I sat in my grandfather's old armchair and made notes in his ledger. I wasn't trying to replace him. I was just trying to carry what he left without letting it break me. And in doing so, I was becoming something I never expected, part of the story. A week later, I returned briefly to Philadelphia. My bookstore job was gone, of course. They'd moved on. But I wasn't sad. I took my old manager out for coffee and thanked him for everything. Then I visited the small apartment I used to call home. It felt too small now, not in size, but in purpose. I realized I couldn't go back. The person I'd been before the will reading was gone. Not better, not worse, just transformed. I packed my things in silence and left without looking back. Back at the estate, changes began. I opened part of the mansion to a local literacy program, started restoring the neglected schoolhouses on the land, hired local artists to teach workshops. Gregory called it charity. I called it responsibility. I didn't care if they mocked me. I had direction now. And every time doubt crept in, I reread my grandfather's letter. His voice was my compass, steady and sure. Even in silence, he was guiding me forward. Over time, some relatives reached out. A cousin I barely knew sent a card. Lydia sent a single email. Just a line. "You were always more like him than any of us." I didn't respond. Not out of bitterness, but because some things don't need answers. They need action. And I had plenty to do. The estate became not just a home, but a hub. A place where legacy and future met. Where a forgotten granddaughter became something none of them expected. A leader. 1 year later, on the anniversary of his death, I stood alone in the garden. The tulips were blooming, the same kind I used to pick as a child. I placed a small plaque beneath one of the trees, for those who see beauty where others see weeds. It wasn't for me. It was for every overlooked soul who needed someone to believe in them. My grandfather had believed in me when no one else did, and now I would spend my life doing the same for others. This story didn't begin with a fortune. It began with $10 and a laugh, but it ended with something far more valuable. A purpose. I'm Audrey Bennett, granddaughter of Richard, former bookstore clerk, reluctant heiress, and now, the keeper of a legacy. And if I've learned anything, it's this. Sometimes the smallest inheritance carries the heaviest truth, and sometimes being underestimated is the greatest gift of all.